3 centuries ago, there lived a man who asked God for an unusual grace. He no longer desired years, success, or privileges. He asked for only one thing: to be able to live in the very age we live in. That man was Saint Louis Marie Grignon de Montfort, a French priest, mystic, and founder of a Marian devotion that still today trains the most tenacious soldiers of tradition. He had already understood everything 300 years before it happened. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the words that LifeSiteNews' John Henry Weston has been publicly reread in recent days, words from a man many want to silence, are the exact answer to that prayer of Montfort. You will understand that you are not alone, that you are not schismatic, and that the moment we are living in has a precise name in the history of the Church. Montfort wrote his most important work, True Devotion to the Most Blessed Virgin, at a time when the Church was besieged by Jansenism, the Enlightenment, and the persecution of priests in the streets of Paris. Yet he wasn't looking back at his time, he was looking forward. In True Devotion, Montfort describes the end times as an era in which God will raise up a band of apostles, little, poor, despised by the world, who through Mary will crush the serpent's head. Not through political power, not through media influence, through total consecration to the Immaculate Conception. And then he wrote these words, words that resonate as wonderfully as if he had written them yesterday. I would that God would grant me to live in that time, that I might share in the joy and glory of his children and servants. Here's what we know for sure. Montfort wanted to be here, with us, now. What exactly had Saint Louis de Montfort seen? He saw a church in deep crisis, gripped by men who wear clerical garb, but not faith. He saw a hierarchy that adapts to the world, rather than converting it. But above all, he had seen the answer. Not in the Vatican chancelleries, not in the synods, not in the episcopal conferences. He had seen her in the faithful, those little ones consecrated without reserve to the Immaculate, who, together with her, would crush the serpent's head. This was his dream. This was his prophecy. Tradition is not mistaken about the nature of the problem. Montfort understood that the Church's crisis does not come from outside, from kings, emperors, or persecutions. It comes from within, from the pastors who have stopped believing what they teach. And he understood that the answer couldn't come from the top of the hierarchy. It had to come from below, from the little ones, from the faithful. Let's pause for a moment, because something specific happened recently that deserves our full attention. John Henry Weston, co-founder of LifeSiteNews, one of the most courageous voices in Catholic journalism worldwide, reread publicly on YouTube a statement by Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano that he himself calls little known. A plea that Weston describes as one of the most rousing I've ever heard. Here it is, translated in full. Archbishop Vigano said, "Now it's our turn. Without equivocation, without allowing ourselves to be driven out of this church, of which we are legitimate children, and in which we have the sacred right to feel at home. Without the hateful horde of Christ's enemies making us feel marginalized, schismatic, excommunicated." And he continues, "Now it's our turn. The triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, co-redeemer and mediatrix of all graces, passes through her little ones, certainly fragile and sinful, but absolutely opposed to the members enrolled in the army of the enemy. Little ones consecrated without any limit to the Immaculate, to be her heel, the most humiliated and despised part, the most hated by hell, but who together with her will crush the head of the infernal monster. They had said it. No one had listened. But now reread Montfort and reread Vigano side by side, and you'll get shivers. Vigano's little ones consecrated to the Immaculate are exactly the group of apostles Montfort saw 300 years ago. It's not a coincidence. It's a consequence. When tradition says something, it doesn't say it out of nostalgia or rigidity. It says it because it has understood the nature of the problem, and the nature of the problem doesn't change. But there's something the headlines haven't revealed, and here's where things get complicated, significantly. Vigano speaks of people being made to feel marginalized, schismatic, excommunicated. This isn't a rhetorical detail. It's a precise description of what thousands of traditionalist Catholics in Italy and around the world endure every day. Catholics who go to Mass as usual, who pray the Rosary, who wear the scapula, who ask to feel at home in their church, and are sent back as troublemakers, as rebels, as enemies of synodality. And meanwhile, in synods, episcopal conferences, dioceses, synodality is celebrated, process is spoken of, and community discernment is invoked. Beautiful. But the gospel is not a process. Faith is not a vote. Truth is not deliberated. This is the point that no major media outlet has made clearly. The problem isn't that some Catholics are too traditionalist. The problem is that there is a difference between being children of the Church and being children of the world, and that difference is being punished today. And the question every Catholic is asking right now is, so what do we do? If the hierarchy is silent, if the bishops adapt, if Rome seems to be going in a different direction, what do we do? The answer had already been given decades ago by a man on the path to beatification. A man who had seen the Church's crisis with even clearer eyes than ours, because he had seen it from the inside. That man was Bishop Fulton Sheen. Sheen said, in words attributed to him by generations of Catholics, "Who will save our Church? Not our bishops, not our priests, and our religious. It is up to you, the people. You have the minds, eyes, and ears to save the Church. Your mission is to ensure that your priests act as priests, your bishops as bishops, and your religious as religious." Let's close the circle. The question we posed, what can we do, already has an answer. And the answer doesn't come from me. It comes from Montfort, from Viganò, from Weston, from Sheen. It comes from tradition itself. The answer is concrete, practicable, and within everyone's reach. Daily Mass, if possible. Daily Rosary. Scapula. Devotion of the 5 first Saturdays. These aren't symbolic gestures. They are the weapons of the battle that Montfort described, and that Vigano reminds us to never stop fighting. Tradition is never mistaken about the nature of the problem. And St. Paul, he says it twice in the same passage in verses 8 and 9 of the first chapter of his letter to the Galatians, allows no exceptions. But even if we, or an angel from heaven, preach to you a gospel contrary to the one we preach to you, let him be accursed. As we have said before, so now I say again, if anyone preaches to you a gospel contrary to the one you received, let him be accursed. Twice. St. Paul says it twice, not through involuntary repetition, but because he knew the time would come when someone would try to convince us that a new gospel was needed, and that time is now. And when history is written, when the triumph of the Immaculate Heart is manifest, when the peace of Fatima finally arrives, it will be said that in the darkest hour there were men and women who did not betray Christ, who did not abandon tradition, who did not surrender their souls, not by their own strength, not by human brilliance, but because they hid under the mantle of His Holy Mother. If you appreciate this work and wish to support it, you can subscribe to the channel. It's an independent project with no sponsors or funding. It grows only with the help of those who believe in its mission. Thank you so much for your support. What do you think? If you liked the video, comment Amen. God bless you.